Hello, welcome to Cockeyed and Curious. Today is what we call the It's Me Day. This is the first time I think in many months that I've had the house to myself for an extended period. If I'm home, Kelly's home. Though she goes for a run every now and then and I go for a run, so we get a little bit of free time, and once in a while she'll go to the store, and so I'll get like 20 minutes there, maybe 40 minutes. But for the most part, I just haven't had the house to myself. But today she went off with some friends. They're going to play on the water. I think they have kayaks or canoes or some kind of watercraft. I think they're gonna go swimming. Meanwhile, I'm at home. I did a bunch of chores. I wanted to take care of things and impress her when she got back for all the progress I've made on various things. But now I'm just gonna play board games all day. It's gonna be great. I was debating what I wanted to play today. I was thinking maybe I would do Too Many Bones, or perhaps some Hoplomachus. I thought about more Aeon's End, though I'm really excited because I have some Kickstarter goods coming for that one, and I'm looking forward to have more variety. Not that I've already exhausted what's already in the pack, but I'm someone who just loves it when there's a lot of things going on, a lot of possibilities, and everything keeps changing. And I just want to see completely new cards. I'm really excited about the prospect of change, which unfortunately is one of the reasons my board game collection has gotten so large, is that giving me a choice between a new game and a game I've played many times, I might go for the new game. Though there have been a lot of games that I've been really excited about playing more of, such as Root, Concordia, or some just the top of my tongue. I'm also excited to play with people in terms of Arkham Horror and also Aeon's End even, among others. So there's a whole spectrum of games I want to keep playing, as well as ones that I want to explore. But today I have a lineup. I don't know how far I'm going to get into it, but I'm pretty excited. So I recently been playing Marvel's Champions, and it's actually a lot of fun. I had read some things that considered a little simplistic and compared it negatively to Arkham Horror, but that hasn't been my experience thus far. Maybe the character building's not as in depth. I'll be completely forthright. I've only played 3 games so far of Champions. I've just been going solo through all the different characters, and then I'm going to play sets of 2 of them, and probably at some point go on and fight someone beyond Rhino. I've just been taking the same villain on over and over again. Of the 3 games I've played, I've lost 2, won the last one, so I'm on an upward trend, but I'm excited to just see what the cards are all like and then do the different combinations of cards, and I can talk a little more about that game later as I play it. I'm probably going to do another run through of Role Player. I played this for the first time yesterday. It's basically a D&D creation game where you're rolling dice kind of like Yahtzee, and there's ways to manipulate the dice, and there's variable goals each game based on some starting cards you get, as well as a market that you get access to as the game goes on. I'm pretty excited about playing this again. I played it solo last night. I'll play it solo again. I think this might be a game that Kelly will play, because she's gotten completely hooked on Sagrada. We've been playing a lot of Sagrada lately, and it's just been a game that really exercises her mind, gives her some creative space. It's an abstract. There's not really that much confrontation. There is an element of the game where you could see what the other person needs, and that could influence what you take, but I've been playing non-aggressive, trying to avoid kind of the take that mechanics that she doesn't enjoy, in terms of feeling like you're against her. That's just not something that she really engages with, so I try not to do that in that game. And I think even in Role Player, there are some kind of take that cards. I think we can play them in ways that would be amicable to both of us. I may do a quick run through of Nova Luna. I played this last night as well. I've been having a little bit of board game festivities by myself, apparently. But this one was a little bit of a brain burner. I actually did pretty well last night. I think it was a fluke. I think I got lucky with the market. But I love this game thus far, just from the one play, because it has very simple rules. You can teach it very quickly, but there's a pretty wide spectrum of options, and it's definitely kind of a mental puzzle. You're just trying to connect symbols based on the scoring mechanism, which is determined by cards that you select. So far, so good. It's also very abstract. I think it might be another good one for Kelly. Basically, since this pandemic's begun, I've been focusing more on games that are good at solo, as well as ones that are good for she and I. I anticipate that soon, with more people accepting that if you wear masks and are outside near each other, you can play games. Like the other day, for example, 3 of us got together and played The Crew, which was an awesome game. It's really fun. Cooperative game where you basically work together to take tricks, and there's always a target for the tricks, and there's different scenarios, and each of the scenarios progressively gets a little bit harder than the last one. So The Crew was a lot of fun. It was my first forays into playing outside with people, and I think we're going to move on to a group of us to play Gloomhaven as a group, and I can see other games coming into the mix, and I'm hoping that some of these games I've already mentioned will be part of that, and I'm still excited to get Root to the table. My group that I've been playing with, I think I'm starting to lose them a little bit, minus one person, in terms of the Root love. But that game, it just really excites me. It's just really fun. It's goofy. I love the tactical decisions. I love how it's kind of open warfare of dialogue. You're just trying to manipulate everyone while trying to scheme your points that you need. It's just such an interesting game, playing such an asymmetric set of rules where everyone basically works differently. I'm excited eventually to try the other games like Vast, that Leader Games puts out. I think I'm also going to love that because those are even more asymmetric. But again, I need the proper group of people that are okay with conflict, don't get too attached or emotional about things, can pay attention, can engage, and are willing to play multiple times. If I can get this like perfect storm of players together, then I'm really excited to dig in deep to those type of games. The last game on the table, or that may go on the table rather, is Paladins of the West Kingdom. I've had this for a while. This box, you can't tell, but it is really heavy. It's like they jam-packed this. It feels almost like Gloomhaven in terms of how much it weighs. But my understanding is that the solo version of the game is okay, and I'm excited just to use that even to learn the game. I don't know when I'm going to actually get to play it with other people, just because it is a little bit more laborious as I understand things. I don't think I'm going to get Kelly into it, but maybe one of these backyard patio type scenarios that I'm envisioning. I wake up sometimes from dreams of just picturing us outside playing these games, and I just feel so happy and vibrant and a glow even. So I'm hoping to learn this game. I'm not sure if I'll have enough time before Kelly gets back or not, but even if she comes back, I can play it later this week on one of the nights. I haven't even looked at the rules yet, so it's going to be quite an adventure to unpack it all. So yeah, so that's basically my day ahead of me. I'm going to intersplice some footage of me playing some of these games, maybe talk about some of the aspects I like about them, and that's going to be the event today. So welcome to Cockeyed and Curious. This is Home Alone Pandemic 2020 edition. I'm going to provide a quick overview of Marvel Champions before I get into the gameplay. When picking a hero, they come with their own set. I think it's usually or always 15 cards of unique cards for that hero. They also have kind of their own weakness that you shuffle into the encounter deck, and then they have a nemesis that can come out, which produces some unique aspects as well. The other thing that you do is you pick one of the thematic sets of cards from which you can then combine to make a deck of 40 to 50 cards. Justice, Aggression, Protection, and Leadership are the different sets of cards that you can use. When you first buy the base game, you only have so many of each of these different sets, but as you buy the expansions, they'll come with whatever thematic edition it is. For example, Captain America is an expansion. They'll also throw in cards from one or more of these other sets, and thus you can over time have more cards from which you can pick from. This game I'm going to play with Iron Man. I haven't tried him yet. What's interesting is, so when you play Marvel Champions, you have an alter ego side, so Tony Stark, and then the superhero side, which is Iron Man. And so you have to flip back and forth between the two, and what you can do on your turn and how the enemy reacts to you varies depending on which side of the card you're on. What's also unique is that Iron Man can only hold one card in his hand, whereas Tony Stark can hold 6. But Iron Man has a little bit of text here that explains that as you add tech upgrades to your player board, for each of those upgrades you can hold one additional card, up to 7. So he starts a little bit weak, but as the game goes on and he invests in more technology, he becomes more powerful. He also has fewer hit points than the other characters I've used thus far. He only has 9. I think the max I've seen is about 14 or 15 thus far. So that's going to be a little bit different too. It's going to be a pretty big deal when he gets hit as compared to some of the other heroes who could take a few blows before you had to worry about their sustainability into the turns ahead. Okay, I'm going to play around this contraption. Eventually I'm going to have a better setup where I'm going to have the camera hopefully out of focus so I can talk to this camera and then interact with the cards on the table without having to have this monstrosity in front of me. But for now, this is my setup. So I'm fighting the rhino. I'm going to put him in here. He actually has 2 cards. He has a 1 card. See the other one's up there? And then he has a 2 card as well. You also see that up here he has a scheme and an attack. So basically every time he goes, unrelated to the scheme thing, he puts a threat on his main scheme as he's trying to break into whatever he's trying to break into. The theme's a little bit weak at times. And so basically, whenever it's the villain's turn, he adds 1 threat per player. So since I'm playing solo, he'll just add 1 at a time. If at any point he gets a 7 threat per hero that's on here, so it'll be 14 threat if there's 2 heroes, then you lose the game. So this is the main scheme that you're trying to prevent. So basically, whenever the villain's up, if you're in your alter ego form, then he'll add whatever his scheme is as a base, and then basically you flip a card, and all the enemy cards, sometimes in the lower right corner or somewhere else, they'll have these little icons. This one doesn't have any, whereas this one has 1. So if he were to scheme and his base was 1 scheme, and then he picked a card from the top that had one of these, then he would scheme 2, and he'd add 2 threat to that card. Again, if he gets a 7 per hero, then the game is lost. So in this case, there would be 2 schemes added, 2 threats. So in this case, it would be 1 plus 1, which would end up being 2 threat added to the overall scheme. If this card came up as it did, then you would only see the 1 added. Different villains in different phases of the game even have different scheming abilities. The other important stat to look at is the attack stat, and that's how much he hits you for if you're in the hero mode. So this is Tony Stark. This is the alter ego side. And so if he's this side up, then when the villain goes, as I mentioned, he will be scheming rather than fighting. And every alter ego has their own little action. Tony Stark lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, and discard the other. So he lets you go through your deck quickly, looking for the cards that you desire. The other useful thing about alter egos is this is how you heal. If you see in the upper left, you'll see that it says REC for recover. That's how many hit points you get back. He only has 9 hit points, so he gets a third of his life back whenever he recovers. The Iron Man side, this is when you can take away the threats from the various schemes, so he can take 2 away as an action. He can attack for base 1, and then defense is a way that you can defend when the villain attacks you. So basically, if you defend while you're being attacked, then that prevents you from doing certain actions during your turn. So you can choose to take damage in order to do more activities on your turn, or you can just take the damage and then you'll be able to, for example, attack or remove threats. There are ways to do both, but the general rule is that you can't. And then the other thing that's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, is Iron Man only has a hand size of 1, but you get +1 hand size for each tech upgrade that you play. So underneath here, when you start the game, you draw to your hand size, and then you can choose whether or not you want to use all the cards, or you can mulligan some by just putting them in your discard pile and then drawing replacements. I'm going to go over a turn that I found to be kind of exciting. It shows a little bit of the decisions in the game and how some of the mechanics work. So this is the game board right now. These are my cards here. Oops. And this is Rhino. He has a suit of armor right now. Basically, if it takes 4 more points of damage, it goes away. Right now there's 5 threat. Again, if I get to 7, then the game's over, so that's bad. My hero is confused right now, so that's not good. What that means is the next time I would try to thwart, so if I were to try to take 2 scheme off as my action, instead I would just lose my confused card. So it's really hard right now for me to deal with the threat up there. Instead, I think I'm just going to try to mess up the Rhino a little bit. So I have a bunch of tech cards right now, and if you recall, I get +1 hand size for every tech card that I have. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I already had 1, so I can hold 6 cards. And I happen to have some of the same cards played right now, which is okay. I have 2 rocket boots, and basically these just allow me to spend this type of resource in order to get the aerial trait. And I want that because with the gauntlets I have here, I can just exhaust them on my turn, which is basically tapping for magic. And if I tap these cards, I can do 1 damage, but if I'm aerial, I do 2 damage for each of these. So that's 4 damage. Again, this has 1 on it, so if I do 4 damage, I can get rid of this armor and then start to fight him. He has 14 life right now, so he's doing pretty well. I originally only had 9 hit points, but I've learned that Iron Man can get these various upgrades that allow me to get more life, so I'm at 13 right now. For example, this card here says plus 6 hit points, so I got more hit points from this card. So what I think I'm going to do is, one of my 6 cards I have is War Machine. He's an ally you can play, and basically that means he can help thwart, so take some of the threat off, or he can attack, and he can also exhaust himself to take damage but hurt many enemies. So if there are a lot of minions out, that would be a great way to just kind of pepper them with damage. But I think I'm actually going to use him. So one of the resources here is a star, and that's a wild card. So I can use that along with, as that resource, to tap this card. I'm going to tap it, I'll just put it there. So now I'm aerial. And so this right here goes to my discard pile. Now I can tap this and tap this. I'm just going to put them on top of each other to do 4 points of damage. So 4 and 1 is 5. So this card now goes away. So now I can start hitting this bad boy. And then in my hand I have this Supersonic Punch, which does 4 damage. But if I'm aerial, then I do 8 damage. And it needs 2. This is one of the few cards that has 2 resources on it, so that's 2 resources to pay for this. So I just did 8 points of damage on him, so he goes from 14 to 6. So he's almost wasted. Now I still have 3 cards in my hand, but they all have cost of 3, so I'm not able to pay for any of those. None of them have extra icons. Now I've used all these. Now I have a choice here. I can either attack the Rhino to do another 2 points of damage to him, because I do 1 attack plus 1 on this, or I can just try to thwart, which will get rid of this confused card, which I think I'm going to do, is I'm a little bit worried about the situation up there with the threat. So I'm going to tap him, get rid of the confused, and then at the end of your turn what you do is you just untap everything, and then you draw back to your hand limit. So in this case my hand limit is 6. Oh, the other thing you can do also is, if I didn't want any of these cards, I could discard cards. I think I want to try to get through my deck and maybe get to cards that are going to help me remove the threat. So I'm going to discard 2, just keep 1 to do some more big damage, and then I'm going to draw to 6. And that was my turn. Okay, things are getting a little intense here. I just was able to remove a lot of the threat. I was able to grab this Mark V helmet, which lets you remove some threat. I also happen to get the arc reactor, which lets you untap Iron Man 1 time, so I can ready him. And so I was able to remove threat twice with that, plus the helmet, so the situation's a lot better. I was in dire straits. If I had drew the wrong card earlier, if it added any more threat, I would have been hosed because I was at 6, but I'm pretty excited. I'm going to take some celebratory coffee, but I'm going to add a little bit of the magic stuff. Just get a little bit of booze in here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of whiskey too, but I'm going to do that off camera so you don't see the extent of the pour. Okay, I just won the game. Things were looking a little bit tense. So I thought I was completely hosed if I didn't win on this turn, but I just realized that I was going to be okay. So the situation was that Rhino had this overkill attachment attached to him. It's called Charge, and it makes him do more damage. So essentially, I could have put the Hulk, who's already wounded, in the way of the attack, but then the spillover, which is what overkill does, the spillover would have gone over to my guy and hit me for probably at least 4, which is what I had left, and I would have been dead. But I just remembered that on my turn I could have switched over to the Tony Stark side, and so rather than getting attacked by the enemy, the Rhino would just schemes more. There's only 3 threat on the scenario, so I think I would have been okay. But for a moment there I was thinking I had to kill him this turn. But he only had 8 life, and I have a whole slew of cards. I have the Supersonic Punch, where if I can go aerial, which I can because I have the right resource down here, then I can do 8 damage, so 8 damage there. He's done. This game is a lot of fun. I really like how you have to choose which cards you want to play, which ones you want to use for resources, which isn't a new concept. I mean, Race for the Galaxy has that among other games going back many, many years. But it's just fun and refreshing in this scenario. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the solo tour and just actually pick 2 characters, make my own decks, and take it from there. Maybe try a different villain as well. I think I've beaten up or gotten beaten up by Rhino pretty well enough. I'm now 2 wins in a row. I had 2 losses before that. I think I'm getting the game, and I think I want to mix it up a little bit. We'll have to see if, as I keep playing, if it starts to get a little stale. But I think with the ability to have different villains, mix up the different card decks, and everything else, I think it's going to stay fresh for a while. It's the right amount. There's not a lot of thinking. There's not a lot of downtime. You can play a game in like 30 minutes. At least that's been my experience with the Rhino. Maybe it's a little bit different when you add more characters. But yeah, so far it's really good. So game 1 of the onslaught of Kelly's Away, let's just game all day. Festivities is complete. I'm going to put this away and then set up Role Player. So yeah, this has been good so far. I'm now ready to play some Role Player. I have it set up in front of me for a solo game. Pretty excited to play it. I'm going to blast through it, I think. It's just a quick palate cleanser before I move on to the heavy game for the day. It's going to be a little intense trying to figure out how to play Paladins of the West Kingdom, but I think I got a handle on it. So the basic premise of this game is you get a character race, and then you also randomly get a class. I got the Warrior. Whenever you get a class, you get to pick between 2 sides. I think I got the Barbarian or the Warrior. I went with the Warrior. And then you get an alignment, and you also get a backstory. My backstory happens to be the Chosen One. I ended up with the Rebel, who is chaotic good. The closer you can get to chaotic good, the more points you get. If you go for lawful evil, then you're losing a lot of points. So through the cards that you can buy, different skills, they will modify your alignment. You're rolling dice for your stats. Because I'm a warrior, there's certain stats that I'm trying to get for the different positions. And this is classic D&D. So you have strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And you get the modifier from the race. You get more points if you get the certain stats to the right settings. So for example, I'm going for 18 for strength. That gets me a lot of points. I want my charisma to be more than 14, and so on. The backstory basically has you put different dice colors in different places. Essentially, this is very similar to Sagrada. It's a little bit different, obviously. You don't have the tools. There's different ways of manipulating dice, and how the interactions of the game actually play out are different. But ultimately, you have dice. You're trying to figure out the optimum way to place them. There's ways to modify what you place, and you're trying to optimize your use of those abilities. There's cards that you buy that allow you to manipulate dice as well. There's also different sets you can collect to get more points. There's a currency in the game that you can collect money and then try to spend it to get ways to improve your alignment or move dice around or alter dice or just to get pure points. It's very variable because you're rolling the dice and the order of the items that come out and when you may be able to secure them or not, that all changes each game. Solo mode basically just has a randomness. If you take a higher quality die, then you have higher odds of losing an item from the purchase market. The item you lose might not be one you care about, or it might be one that you really want. So that's the factor there. It's just this randomized intrusion on your ability to get what you want. At sometimes it won't matter, and sometimes it will. So yeah, and that's the solo player role player. So I'm gonna get going, and then I'll show a little bit of gameplay, and then we'll move on from there. Outside of some panning shots of some of the components, I didn't actually record any of the gameplay. But I did record this sweet shot of the initial roll. And I went over how I scored. I finished my board. I have all my dice in place. I picked up a couple skills. Got a trait. Got a bunch of the chain armor pieces, which is going to be a lot of points, especially with the tower shield, which lets me make up for one piece of an incomplete set. So I have 4. I can use that to get the 5th to complete my set. Pretty excited about this. I did okay with matching up my dice colors with my backstory. I did pretty well with meeting my primary goals in terms of strength, dexterity, and constitution because they have more stars, they give you more points. I also managed to snag the optimum alignment, which gives me 3 points. So first you do your attribute goals. I got them all actually. So that's alright, that's 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you do class color dice. Class color dice are a number of the red ones, since that's my color, so that's 4. And I do my alignment card, it's another 3. Backstory card. This I did not do as well on. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's good though, that gives me that. My armor cards with this gave me 10 points. So that's 32. And then my trait gives me another 2, so 34. Not too bad, I'll take that. Okay, that was my run through on Role Player. Well, I managed to play Role Player, did Marvel's Champions. I just got news that Kelly's returning. She'll be back in about an hour. I don't think I'm going to have time to do the Paladins game, though I'm going to start reading the rules so that way I can play it later. I had a great time though. Both games were fun. I think Marvel's Champions is going to be more of a solo game than Role Player. First of all, I don't want to get too much experience at the game because Kelly prefers not to get slaughtered at games. She tends to be pretty good at these dice manipulation games, so I think she'll give me a run for my money there, but I don't want to get too much experience. Pardon the terrible pun there. But yeah, it was a nails biter. I did a little better than my first time playing the game. Definitely got a better feel for the game. Looking forward to giving it a go on the 2-player. But yeah, I think this will be the last time I play it solo. Thanks for joining me. Cockeyed and curious. See you next time.